Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Austin Clark, host of the Multiply You podcast. I've got a fantastic guest on today who I'll introduce here in just a moment. And it's good to be back with everybody. We're kind of in the middle end of our summer and busy season for most of us, depending where we are throughout the country in the United States. And I think that a lot of us have got the end of a busy summer in sight and are looking forward to the fall and winter and different challenges that represents. This podcast is brought to you by my company, Catchy Pest Control. And we have been fortunate, like many of you have, to be growing. We're growing organically through different efforts there, like SEO and PPC and different, other marketing strategies. We've really effectively, the last 4 or 5 years, not just here in Phoenix, but nationally, been successfully growing via acquisition. And so if anyone is out there in any of our markets and you know anyone with 3 to 5 or more trucks on the road, we would certainly be very interested in visiting with them. We did a deal here in Phoenix just at the very beginning of the month. It was a smaller deal, but this owner was surprised how much we paid for his company. And he is out living his best life in Las Vegas now, hopefully having some good luck at the tables and in some of those casinos. But it's gone really, really well. And every time we do one of these deals, we get a little bit better and a little bit more effective. So it is my absolute pleasure today to be able to introduce Brendan of Catchy Pest Control out of New York City. Brendan has cut his teeth and earned his pest stripes over 20 years. I was kind of joking with him earlier. The worst thing we deal with here in Phoenix is ants and scorpions and maybe some tarantulas that people get on the outskirts. But Brendan is a real pest control man battling much larger pests and rodents on the streets of New York. So he's been at this a long time. He has tons of experience. And I'm so glad that you're here today, Brendan, with us today. How are you doing? What's happening in your life right now?
Thank you for having me. We're out there the busy time of year. So out there killing all these little pests.
Yeah, very, very busy time of year. I normally like to start with guests, Brendan. So how did you kind of get your start? No one in pest control thought they were going to go into pest control. Pest control usually finds us, I like to say. And so how did you end up or wind up in pest control? What's a little bit of your backstory?
Yeah. You don't go to college for pest control. You go for entomology or something like that. Really, it was back in 2000 during the early days of the internet. They had all these .com companies, and they were all making millions of dollars, getting all this venture capital money. And then in 2000 or 2001, all of that burst. The bubble burst. There was no more money. I worked in telecom, and even though telecom was different, it was still that same boat where, the companies were like, we're fine, we're doing great. And then the next day they were out of business. So I went from company to company as a salesman, trying to keep afloat. But everyone did the same thing. We're hiring, we're doing great. I don't know whatever happened to everybody else, but we're fine. And then they went out of business too. So what ended up happening is that a friend of mine told me about a pest control company that was hiring. And I said, I'll give it a chance. And I went there and, I really loved it. I loved that I'm helping people. We'll get phone calls, from people who are really desperate. They have bed bugs and they haven't slept in weeks. And they've had maybe other pest control companies show up there and not do a very good job. And so they still have bed bugs. Maybe they are fighting with their landlord because the landlord won't pay for it, things like that. And I'll get that call from somebody desperate and I can help them. And that makes me feel really good. It's not like you have a lot of opportunities to do that in telecommunications or other service industries. But in pest control, you have the opportunity to help people. So that's what I did. And, I just kept growing and eventually started my own business.
Fantastic. What was it, Brendan, that made you switch, or not switch, but you were doing the telecom thing, had a couple of different jobs, they kept going out of business. You started to work for a pest control company. How long did you work for that pest control company, or when did the seeds start to get planted of, hey, maybe I could do this on my own, or I should do this on my own? And what was kind of the decision-making process in getting there?
Yeah,
Because
so
that's risky.
it's hard.
That's not like a normal thing to think about.
It's
Like,
very
hey, I'm
risky.
gonna, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to get like into, what ended up happening, but, as, it's kind of sad in a way. You have this loyalty and you work really hard and you help somebody build a company. And in the end, you have to do what's best for you. So, even though you've worked really hard and put all this effort in, you really should be doing it for yourself. And that's what I learned after that experience. Now, during that, I always thought I was a partner and I'm part of this company. But then, things aren't in writing and you ask for them to be in writing and then they're not. And, it was sad because when they found out that I was starting my own business, they fired me on the spot, and it wasn't like I was like, we could be partners. We could, this is not, I'm planning on moving far away. It's not like it was a personal thing, but they made it a personal thing. So it just goes to show you, after all those years, you can still be considered nothing. And when you own your own business, that's different. So, I don't know who listens to this. If you're a technician and you're out there, make sure you have plans for retirement. Make sure that this is something that you could do and you could stay here for the rest of your life, because you have to think that way. And maybe it's time for you to look into your options and see what you could do on your own.
No, fantastic. So you were at a company for a few years and then you started your own.
Time, yeah.
How were the first couple of years, Brendan? And what was that transition like from technician to business owner or entrepreneur? I mean, the buck stops with you at that point.
It is not easy. You really have to have the stomach for owning a business. If you start out, my best advice to people starting out is to write a checklist of everything you need to do. Talk to people who own businesses, see what they did when they started out. Don't spend any money you don't have to, because you will need that money at some point. I had to take a job as a salesman for a truck company, and they were great. I loved it there. I was selling 18-wheelers and, the big box trucks, the refrigerated trucks. And I really liked it. But, my goal again was to have my own pest control company. So I worked there for about 2 years while working at night, trying to get clients here and there. And I did, at one point, 2 years after I had started the business, I finally had enough revenue where I could take the leap. And, the bills were paid and basically paid. I did need to get started right away and get a bunch of new clients, which I was able to do. Really just one-time jobs, here and there, but it worked. And, those are the stories that you hear about, when people are starting a business. You work 12 hours a day, you work on Saturday and Sunday.
It's no joke. That's what
it's really
that's
not
the sacrifice that's required to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not, again, if it goes back to, if you're a technician listening in your car right now and you're like, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, it is. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And
probably
it's worth
more than you're even thinking in your head right now.
Gosh, it's funny because I never talk about this stuff. So just rehashing the past is like kind of funny to look back in these apartment buildings in really troubled neighborhoods where you're going from one apartment to the next and for $75, risking your life, and you do it, when you have that, drive, or, that this is something that you really want, you do it. I would drive to the Bronx at 11 o'clock at night for $50, and it was like, by the time you're done, you're only making 25 in profit, it's really, but you do it. So, and by doing that, you get all the experience too. You figure out, the insurances that you need and the licenses that you need to add, different categories. I'm not sure what it's like in Arizona, but here, the New York State DEC is pretty strict, and you want to have every license. You want to tell anybody who calls, we can help you. And if it's a raccoon in the attic or squirrels or bed bugs, or they have a restaurant, you want to have those licenses. You don't want to just try to do things without licenses, because when they catch you, they're going to punish you, and it's not worth it. So, the first thing you do when you start a business is get all your licenses together, figure out what your insurance is, how much is it going to cost to register your company, and don't even think about doing any of that stuff until you have a little bit of money together. It does cost a lot of money to get started. Not a terrible amount, but a good amount that you need to be prepared and have a budget and be ready to go with that. That's what I would.
Well, and one of the things, Brendan, that you said that I really appreciate, because I think that most people that either are sitting in their cars or driving from job to job that are listening to this right now, is, you said you drive at 11 o'clock at night to jobs in the Bronx for $50. But the most important thing that I heard you say was, but it's not really $50, because after all of your costs, taxes, chemical, gas, insurance, business, you name it, just the list goes on and on and on of expenses. It's 20 or $25. And so right. A lot of times they are, or people in the field are kind of disillusioned, thinking, man, this is a $50 job, or this is a $100 job. It'd sure be nice to have that $100 go right into my pocket.
Oh, right.
It's not the reality. It's not the reality of it. There's taxes and all of the things that all of your cost of goods sold, and then not to mention probably the biggest thing that most people forget is your time. And so you're not working for free, or you're working for $10 or $20 an hour or $30 an hour. And so how long did it take to do that job? It didn't take zero time. And so you need to build your time into that to be able to say, hey, it looks like I worked for $5 an hour today, or $25 an hour today. And I see you shaking your head up and down, because in the early days of starting a business, sometimes you're working for $5 a day. And unfortunately, sometimes you're even, working for less than that. But those are some of the sacrifices that you make. I love that. That's really inspirational. And I hope that a lot of the listeners, there was the last 10 minutes or so, 5 minutes, a lot of good nuggets that you gave people, and kind of a checklist in getting their businesses going. You gotta share, Brendan, what's the gnarliest story that you have? It can be a nasty story, or hopefully your life wasn't seriously in danger many times, but give us a good story from your past that you like to tell.
I have all of those, and I always say, which borough, so in New York, we have all the boroughs. So which borough do you want the horrible stories from? You get a lot of calls, I'll save like the worst ones, but, for everybody's sake, but the interesting calls are, and what you have to learn to deal with the most is the people. So pests are bad, but people who are dealing with pests a lot of times have very severe mental health issues. So you have to be able to work around that stuff. And the people, like when I get asked that question, I can think about the time I took 27 raccoons out of a scaffolding at a museum on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. That was pretty gnarly.
Wow.
The times that I've gone into basements that were just completely filled with rats. I remember one time walking down the alley, and the super of the building says, come with me, I'll show you where they are. It's not that bad. I'm like, oh, okay, good. So he gets a stick with a screwdriver taped to the end of it. And I'm like, what's that for? He's like, oh, no. And we go to the basement, and he doesn't speak a whole lot of English, but I know he's just not being, sincere with me.
Yeah.
And we go in, and it's just rats running back and forth on the floor right next to our feet. There was a low pipe over our head, and the tails kept hitting me in the back of the head, as we're walking down. It takes a special kind of person, right?
Yeah.
So to keep walking, it takes a special kind of person, because I've seen plenty of technicians just drop their equipment and walk right out of a place. I could think of another place. So we walk all the way to the back and we get to where the old compactor room was. And rats had like either opened a hole or something had happened, maybe, some little earthquake or something, but there was this hole in the wall and they were just pouring in. And I, assuming that it was either connected to the subway or a sewer line. And they were just finding food and they were all busy and exploring the building. And so we had to go in there and seal the whole thing off. Obviously fix the hole first. And then, I don't want to get into techniques we used. I'm not so sure that they would be legit. But, we came out of there with garbage bags filled with rats. It was pretty wild.
Wow.
That was one of my worst stories. Yeah. The raccoons one is, I love raccoons. So, it's always, I like dealing with them, even though we have to put them down here. It's sad, but it's also like, if you're responsible about it, you're giving them, a quick and painless, So, but most of the time it's dealing with the people, where you have to deal with a hoarder situation and you ring a doorbell and, somebody answers hello and they won't open the door and hi, we've been servicing all of these apartments for mice and we just wanted to check your apartment. You're the only apartment we haven't seen yet. And if you deal with apartment buildings, the one person who doesn't sign up is the person who has the worst.
Oh yeah.
Problem. So
they're going up and down and left and right and all over.
And so, I dealt with her, this one person that I'm thinking of. I have a million of these stories, but there were rats running around the building and we figured it was probably coming from her apartment somehow. We don't know how, because why wouldn't it be coming from the basement? But it really wasn't that bad in the basement. And it turned out she was feeding them. She had them all over the apartment.
Oh, no, she was feeding them.
And she was feeding the rats and keeping them. And, just they were running all over her apartment and, and going obviously into the other apartments.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere when they've got a food source, right? And especially someone that's
really
being so kind to them.
Yeah. Nice, kind person. They learned quickly that human beings were friends, why is this person screaming at me? And then they just run back to her apartment. I mean, we were sealing all of the holes, but it was just too out of control to be like, why is it? It was her, So
those are some. Yeah, those are some stories. You knew that the guy wasn't being completely forthright with you when he had the screwdriver taped to the end of a broomstick, and you started down that dark path. I wanted to transition a little bit. We had talked a little bit before. I think it's safe. Knock on wood. But I think it's safe to say that the bulk or brunt of the pandemic is over, hopefully, and behind us. There's still, symptoms of it here or there, and life has certainly been changed forever. But a lot of pest companies, and not just pest, but companies, period, in general, they didn't fare so well. A lot of them didn't make it out of the pandemic. We were talking about the restaurant industry, and we were talking specifically about pest control companies that have the bulk of their business servicing restaurants. That they didn't make it. The restaurants, a lot of them didn't make it. There's different signs up today than there were 2-3 years ago at some of the places that we go to eat. But you, Brendan, did. What were some of the things that you did? Because certainly you were affected. But what were some of the things that you did to make it through that tough time?
One of the things that I've always been good about is diversifying the type of accounts that we see. So we do about, our core business is industrial. So we're doing warehouses, schools, healthcare facilities, homes for mentally challenged. And we did some restaurants, not a lot. We do a lot, or 25% of our business is residential, which are one-time jobs where people would call and, or find us on the web and call, and we'll do those accounts. I felt bad for a lot of the guys. They had tons of layoffs. When the restaurants closed, some of them, their core business was restaurants. All they did was restaurants. All of them were closed. Even when they reopened, they didn't have any money now. So they can't just sit there and pay the exterminator. And our business is really good. It is kind of recession proof. And I've always been very happy about being in an industry where there's just a definite need. Even if everything went away, you still have to get rid of those mice. I hate to be like that.
Absolutely.
And this is a
Yeah.
really horrible thing to say, but I say it anyway. It's like, even if we're trading bottles of water as currency, the reality is that they're going to still need pest control. Somebody's going to want you to come to their house and get rid of their bed bugs.
Absolutely.
So we are kind of recession proof. But when you shut down every restaurant in New York and, tell people there's no need for it, now looking back, it's crazy. But then, we all thought, oh my God, we have to do this. And, everybody was like, all right, well, I have to lay off all my staff. I mean, what am I going to do? Or go out of business because there's no choice, and this is for the newcomers too, is when you own a business, money runs out quick. If
Very
things aren't
quickly.
coming in, revenue is not coming in, your bills are really high.
Those bills, I always tell
licenses and
people,
insurance,
those bills don't stop. Rent doesn't stop.
they don't
The
stop.
electricity doesn't stop. Every month you can be sure it'll show up.
It is not easy. So they went out of business, and I think rightfully so. Like, what are you supposed to do? You can't go into debt. Trying to stay open. These PPP loans and everything were great. If you had a good lawyer and you knew how to operate it properly, and you didn't take out loans, you took out the PPP and got to forgive it. That's for the rich, or the people who have good lawyers and good accountants and stuff. But when you're a small business, a lot of times you're just doing it yourself and you're trying to figure it out. And luckily for me, I was diversified enough in the types of accounts that I had that the people who did say, oh, put it on hold, or, we'll get back to you next month. Those people were, likely to go out of business or to not have money for a while. So I did have my other customers to count on. And I got a lot of residential too. A lot of people were home for the first time in a long time. And they were like, all right, let's deal with this, noise that we hear in the attic, or,
that we've just put off for years and years. Yeah.
Yeah. They're never home during the day. So they saw a roach for the first time and they couldn't believe it. That kind of stuff happened too. And a lot of people moved, so we got a lot of calls from people who just moved into a new place and they have mice or roaches, but it wasn't easy getting through this. It was, now looking back, it's like, oh my God, how do we do it? But, at the time, the governor asked if we could, or he had originally mandated us or we weren't part of the essential worker program. So there was a list of people who were allowed on the roads. I mean, that's how bad it got in New York. I don't think Arizona even did any of that stuff, but here they were very strict. And
so initially, pest control operators were not on that.
I like telling this to people. Yeah, we were not considered.
I had no idea. We had the essential list here in Phoenix and other places, but we made it on first round. No one had to petition and actually in Arizona, I was surprised at how many people or industries they deemed essential. It was nice to see. But I'm excited to hear you tell this story because I had no idea. That's crazy to me. But I'm in the pest control space, and you understand how quickly things can get out of control. And especially in a place like New York, we're not talking about more ant colonies. We're talking about more rodent infestations, which are disease carrying and can multiply before your eyes.
It was kind of crazy. I mean, we did get on the list pretty quick. I don't think it lasted very long. We weren't allowed on the roads. And even at first I was like, oh, all right, I guess I get a break, and that didn't last very long either. Cause, I can't tell a customer that I'm not going there, oh, you got bed bugs? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not allowed on the roads.
See you in a month or a year or whenever.
Yeah. Whenever they decide that we're essential employees, I think it lasted maybe 2 weeks or so before they had to put us on the list, right? It didn't even make sense not to have us. But that's, again, it goes to show you don't need pest control until you need it. And then you wish you had it. And I always tell my customers, I hope I never see you again. I hope this is the last time you ever have a problem. But if you do, call me, and it's not the last time they'll ever have a problem. One of the things that happened here in New York, which you guys would be like, oh, wow, I didn't know about that, is you might have heard the rat problem here is really out of control. And I know what happened was that they closed all these restaurants, and these rats were living out of these dumpsters. And then the restaurants were gone, the food was gone. So they all moved into the neighborhoods, and they found the apartment buildings, dumpsters and garbage. And so they moved in there. And then when the restaurants opened up, they repopulated that. They didn't just go back. They don't go back, like they just stay where they are. If there's food, they stay. So now we have them in the neighborhoods and on the avenues with the restaurants.
Wow.
And so we are just getting calls all the time for rats. They are everywhere, and people don't have money.
And business has never been better for Catchy Pest. That's that's an interesting thing. When you're not in it, you don't really consider some of those things. But yeah, for restaurants to shut down and to have that garbage not be garbage anymore, and they're going to go somewhere.
They don't die. They don't just go away. They want to live. They're the ultimate survivor.
They're survivors. Yeah, they're survivors. So, I mean, what I heard there as far as the pandemic goes, one, I'm certain that you probably drew on a lot of your inspiration and just experience from years as an operator. But I heard diversify. So, make sure you've got a little bit of different clientele in the event that, again, those pest operators that were all restaurants or all food and beverage handling places, they didn't do so well.
They got crushed.
They got crushed. Yeah, they got crushed. And then also have a little bit of a cash reserve, have a little bit of a rainy day fund, have a little bit of, a few months if you can, a year's even better or more, but
would be great,
money stashed away for expenses that are sure to come because they will always come.
And I never think you're never going to lose all your customers at one time, but you could lose a big account, and you need to have some kind of cash reserve. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up too, because that's another thing. A lot of some pest control companies, half of their business will be this one single account, and that's a wonderful account while you've got it, but you didn't have that account forever, and you probably won't have it forever. It's just the nature of some of those larger bids and those larger jobs. And so while you've got it, get it.
It's great.
But plan on maybe not having it forever. And that will, always plan on losing it so that you're prepared. And if you don't lose it, then great. Yeah.
If you have one customer, you're not a business.
Yeah. So Brendan, as we round this out, and I wanted to save a little bit more time for this, but we've only got a few more minutes, but you have successfully transitioned from, solopreneur, one man, the classic one man shop, to hiring, your first employee. But it's still really challenging. We were talking before, I talk to people literally every day about the labor market and how challenging it is. And although we're in a recession or going into a recession, it kind of doesn't feel like it because the phone is still ringing and jobs are still getting done. And then there's people out there that aren't working or don't need to work. And there's many businesses that are just in such great dire need for employees. How did you make, if you could share a thing or two, how did you make that transition, or what worked for you?
I'm going to say it's just like finding a job. It's who you know. So if you have somebody that you can work with, that you can trust, that's who you go with. And you try to work with people that you know and trust. It's not always a good idea to hire family. But if you have the right partner, you can work with them. I haven't tried a lot of the online things, but I was thinking about trying like Indeed.com and, some of those other websites that do hiring, and just see if you could find somebody who might fit your category, finding somebody who's reliable, who you can trust, who's an excellent driver, because that's all we do is drive. It seems like we're driving more than we do. A
lot of windshield time. Yep.
And who can apply chemicals safely, who understands how to read a label, and how to deal with customers who can, like we talked about earlier, have mental health issues. Finding all of that in one who's not going to ask for more money than you make, that's hard to do. It's really hard to do. So, I don't really have any good advice except to keep your options open, look for people who you can trust and work with. And if you are a new business, hire somebody part-time just to give them a try, see how it works like that.
Yeah. And, I, as I'm talking about this quite a bit right now in my own company, and I've had a couple of recruiters on the podcast and some of them recently, and they've really given some good advice, but it's certainly been a challenge for my organization versus 2.5 years ago. We are probably on some of those online forums, Monster, Indeed, Craigslist, what have you, even some of the social stuff, Instagram, Facebook, we've probably quadrupled our budget, our advertising budget to be able to find those people and attract those people. And we've definitely tripled or quadrupled our efforts. So, we didn't have a full-time recruiter before. Now we do, and she has a full-time person that works below her to be able to find those people. But I think that you have a very narrow avatar. I've listed some of those things out as far as a good driver, honest, reliable, those sorts of things, and cast a really wide net to be able to find those few that you need. But it has definitely been a challenge. They're out there. I mean, there's how many? 250 million people in the United States plus something like that. Every company only needs a handful. They're out there. Yeah, exactly.
Because you have to offer a lot of things too, as benefits and things. My thinking is probably to go with the part-time. So maybe somebody who's a police officer who's looking to make extra money. Something along those lines. But yeah, it's hard.
Fantastic.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Well, I'll leave you the final word as we kind of round this all the way out. Do you have a bit of advice or a bit of knowledge or final words for us as we round this podcast out, Brennan?
No, I think practice gratitude. I'm very thankful for the customers that I have and the life that I have and the things that I do. And, there's people out there who really have it bad. And we consider ourselves, if you're driving now to another job and you're sick of it, remember there's people who don't have a job and they wish they could do what you're doing, and they may not have the capability. So practice gratitude. Good luck to all of you, and I wish you all the very best.
And we'll end on gratitude. Brendan, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for tuning in.
Pleasure.
Thank you, all of you that are out there that are tuning in and listening. These drop every Thursday. So glad to have you on, and we'll catch you guys next Thursday. Create a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.